Welcome to Workstyle Stories, because life changes and every life is different. This week, we're talking about working abroad. We're talking about making the leap to self-employment and being accountable for your work and your work style at the same time. Here to talk about that is the wonderful Jossie. Hello, Jossie. Welcome to Workstyle Stories. I'm excited to chat to you, but before we get into it, into your story, could you just tell us very briefly who you are, where you are, and what you do?
I'm Jossie Morrison. I'm in Bermuda and I help startups figure out their branding to get started.
Wonderful. So you are a marketing person and you're in Bermuda. I mean, how much marketing work is there in Bermuda, or do you find yourself working with clients who are all over the place?
There's not loads, and actually I legally can't work for anyone in or affiliated with Bermuda.
Oh, right, okay.
Due to some boring immigration stuff.
Right.
So I only work for people overseas, which is quite weird.
That's really cool. So why are you in Bermuda? What prompted that?
I followed a boy.
What better
Weird.
reason?
Yeah, it's the only reason I'm here. Oh, that's a pretty wonderful place to be. We'd been together a couple of years in London, and he moved out here for a summer placement, and nearly 6 years later hasn't moved back. So at some point we realized I needed to come over myself. Yes, that's why I'm here. It's been a crazy 5 years or so.
That's amazing. So have you always wanted to live abroad, or was it sort of circumstantial that he went, and so you thought, hey, this is an amazing opportunity, too good to turn down?
Yeah, totally circumstantial. In fact, I remember in like my early 20s, like having a conversation with my mum saying, because loads of friends were moving and living abroad at that time, saying, I really don't get it. I just have no desire to live and work abroad.
So let's talk about your work then. So when you moved to Bermuda, what sort of work were you doing?
When I moved, it's quite hard to find a job here unless you have certain skills, because they understandably and quite rightly do everything they can to protect local employment first over expats, because it's a small place and obviously want to make it for people who are from here. And so I moved out here with a job, and I worked for a design agency as their kind of in-house strategist / dog's body for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Which was great in terms of the fact that I had a job, which sounds a bit pathetic, but here it's, my husband's in quite a male-dominated industry, and a lot of wags like me move out for their jobs. Right. So for years it's been, oh, well done you work, which is fun.
Oh my goodness.
Quite extraordinary.
But so you did that for a bit. How was it? What was it like culturally? Was it
at the beginning I found it really hard because it sounds really, I'd never really noticed my Britishness, because I'd always worked with British people. You don't really, I'd never really thought about it. I realized that my humor is in some ways very British, and I'm very British, and people called me very sweet and very formal a lot of the time, which I found really weird. None of my friends would agree with either of those things. So it took a bit of a while. It took time. It took time as well, working somewhere where I didn't have any social life for a while, because obviously I had to make friends from scratch, didn't know anyone. And so the work itself I found really challenging for all the wrong reasons, because the people were lovely, the hours were short, and I didn't have enough to do, which in some ways sounds lovely, but it was the total opposite of what I'd been doing before, where I'd been working massive hours, so challenged, and I found it quite depressing. I felt like I'd sort of fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, I bet. So what did you do about that then? So did it reach a head? Did it reach a tipping point? What happened?
So I sort of sat it out for 2.5 years, and like started different bits and stuff within that company whilst I was there, which kept me going, but also saw it for a great framework, because being here without work would have been a really different experience, and I wasn't ready. We weren't ready to have a family or anything at that stage.
Yeah.
So I felt very purposeless without it, even though it was frustrating. Yeah. And then the tipping point came when, really puts me in a 1950s stereotype, but when we sort of got engaged and then got married, the tipping point was a bit like, and then we really started talking seriously about hoping to have a family. And I just thought, God, is this the job that I want to be doing instead of looking after any future kids? Like, is this the job worth sacrificing time for them? Which obviously I couldn't predict how I'd feel. Yeah. But the answer was just no across all levels. So that was the tipping point, really, starting to plan a family. And my permit was coming up for renewal. And the thought of another 3 years there just felt like a dreadful thought.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? As soon as your circumstances change or you think about them changing, suddenly it gives you a completely different frame of reference around which to appraise your work. And, you know, you just said there about, is this the thing I want to do, that I want to give up time with a newborn for? And then suddenly the question is much more, I guess, much easier to make, a decision that's much easier to make when you put it in that context, rather than, am I broadly happy doing what I'm doing? So that circumstantial change obviously drove a change of perspective for you. So totally. What did you act on that? How did that change things?
Well, it was tricky because, like, exactly like you say, it was so circumstantial, because whilst the job wasn't the dream in terms of challenge, the people were wonderful and I was so grateful to them. They'd been really good to me for years. But I just didn't have anything of my own. And I sort of turned up for work, left for work, didn't necessarily feel like I'd moved anything forward. So that was kind of my brief for what to do next, in terms of how can I create something that's mine. So what next was, I basically looked into how I could work from here. Would I be able to get work? Funnily enough, getting accepted into Hoxby gave me the confidence to take the plunge. And then went from there, really. And I mean, I'm only in year 2 of doing it.
So how's it going?
It's good. It's changed a lot. Like, I reckon every 3 to 6 months of the last 2 years, I've radically changed what I'm focusing on, which sometimes I feel makes me quite anxious and I feel like I'm really flippant, but at the moment, but I think it's also a result of trying something that I have never done before. I've always been in set frameworks with clear bosses and big hoops to jump through. I've never had to create my own hoops. So it's good. It's good. It's hard.
It's a big challenge, isn't it? And a big part of working for yourself and setting your own work style, setting those boundaries. And you've obviously, time has passed and you've since had a child, right? So you're now doing some work that you are willing to give up time with that child for. Is that fair to say, or how are you finding it? Is it how you imagined it would be?
Is it how I didn't really have an imagination of how it would be, actually, which is maybe a bit naive. I started doing bits and bobs of work when my daughter was 3 months, and that, in honesty, was dreadful. It was far too early. I wasn't ready. We were in lockdown, and I don't know why I did it. But it was really good, because the work I was doing at that time was kind of one-to-one, which I enjoy, but was like bit projects, totally reactive to what came in. And as a result, I found it really hard because I felt totally reactive. And like the weeks that I had work were just crazy busy and I'd be knackered. And at that point, without any childcare. But it prompted me to make smarter decisions for what's now. And it's now going really well, which is really good, because I've got some structure about when I work versus, it's fine, I'll just do it in her naps in the evenings, which is totally unsustainable.
That's absolutely the way, and key to define your work style, really set it, project it and respect it. Jossie, thank you so much. Your story is fascinating. I love the fact that you live and work from Bermuda with clients all over the world. And it's been a real pleasure to chat and to hear more about your story. We've been Workstyle Stories. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.